Since we've been closed, we've hosted one blood drive for the American Red Cross. We have a second one coming up next week. They've used the arena because social distancing is possible in such a large space. They've had a great response, and we know that while all the focus in the healthcare conversation right now is around COVID-19, that the need for blood products remains consistent, and so happy to help our local Red Cross with that. Currently, we are serving as a testing site for state first responders, an antibody serology testing site, not a COVID-19 testing site. We have a setup in our gym. They've been there for about a week and a half. Expect they'll be there for at least another week and a half to make sure that the first responders in the area have an opportunity to find out whether they have antibodies, and that has led to, I think, some comfort for some people and the ability to donate plasma for others. As a community, we started the Laser Response Fund right around March 22nd. We began hearing from students the extraordinary needs that they were experiencing, and wanted to make sure we could respond. To date, the college has raised about $70,000. SUNY is offering a match we hope to take advantage of for another $50,000, and this has allowed us to support many of our students who've been struggling with either job loss, unanticipated medical bills, and for many of our students, a need for additional technology so that they could continue their education. We're pleased that we had the ability to do that. Proud of the participation of our college community in donating to the fund, and happy that we were able to fill in and respond to students in that way. So those are our highlights for the year. What we're here to take you through is our thinking around the 2021 budget. As I know you all know, there is absolutely nothing certain about the upcoming budget year, but I want to walk you through what we've done, what our thinking is, and what we hope will be possible. The state budget looks bleak. The enacted budget provides, as you know, the ability for the budget director to make revisions on a quarterly basis, so that the sense of unknown is likely to be with us for some time. So we're trying to build a budget that allows us to manage through that uncertainty while still providing the education that we're expected to provide. So next slide. Our board has agreed that students should pay a little bit more. We are raising our tuition by $50 per semester. That's about a 2% increase. We know that students have to contribute to closing this budget gap. We also are aware that students who used to work at the mall aren't working, who used to work in our restaurants aren't working, who used to work as teachers' aides and medical aides may not be working. So we're trying to be cognizant of that. So when we look at a tuition increase, we always look at how does that impact the neediest students. If you move to the next slide, we've got an analysis here of how the tuition increase would impact a full-time student who commuted to campus. We are fortunate to be able to keep our fees relatively flat. You'll see an increase of $40 in the technology fee. That's offset by the removal of a per credit technology fee. So the revenue to the college there remains neutral, and the cost to the student does not go up. It's just a movement of a fee from one category to another. We try to keep our fees low. They're close to the lowest in the state. We want to be careful not to put too much of the expectation on the student, but we did move that technology fee from a per course fee to a flat fee. Student activity, rec and wellness, all of those are remaining the same. You'll see the box of books Chromebook. This is an optional fee. Students are able to opt in. We've gotten some great national recognition for this model. It provides books for students at a flat rate per credit. That actually went down this year from $21.50 a credit to $20.50 a credit for their books. This also includes the purchase of an optional Chromebook for $225 if students need that to be able to do their work. For a long time, we've said to students it's possible to go to school and not own a computer. We think that time is probably changing, so our best advice to students will be on the way in that they need to secure some kind of a device that lets them engage. So with our 2021 proposed costs all in, we are looking at $3,343. If you put that against financial aid, the neediest students would receive maximum Pell Awards and maximum TAP Award. The TAP Award will cover our full tuition charge because our full tuition cost is still below the TAP threshold. And the student who receives a maximum Pell Award would receive a refund of $2,375, and that would go toward room and board, transportation, whatever need the student had. So when we look at the tuition increase for our neediest student who's commuting, they actually get slightly more of a refund through their maximum Pell Award. Next slide. The next slide looks at the same information, but rather than looking at a student who commutes, this looks at a student in the residence halls. There are multiple choices that a student makes traditionally for the residence halls, whether they want a single, a double, or a triple room, how many meals to put on their meal plan per week. This outlines all of the costs, and the student who is the neediest student would still have that $2,000 to apply to their room and board expenses. So when we look at the 2% tuition increase, we're confident that this does not create a barrier for students. It doesn't screen out anybody who would be looking to OCC for their higher education advantage. And the reason we are so focused on that is that about 80% of our student body, 80% of the students who come here receive some form of financial aid based on their income to help support their education. So it's important when we think about our tuition and our fee costs that we're very cognizant of how they stack up against the aid that's available for students. I could stop and take any questions on the tuition increase.
All right, very well. Are there any questions at this point? Questions from the members of either committee, please? All right, then. Why don't we keep going?
So when we put together our proposed budget for next year, next slide, please. We are assuming worst case scenario from the state, which would be a decline of about $6.5 million. And we wanted to look the worst case scenario straight in the eye as we're setting out the budget to make sure we were looking at it realistically. So we are proposing our budget overall at $66,607,769. And to make that work, we are hoping that the county will keep its funding flat. We are not, we'd be insane to ask for an increase in this, and we're not insane. So we are hoping that the county keeps its share flat. We are not seeking any capital funding this year. We have delayed, I've talked to you about our facilities master plan. We've delayed even considering anything related to that until we are well past this pandemic. We are proposing to take from our fund balance about $4.4 million to close our budget as we begin the year, with the challenge that we will operate the year with the goal of minimizing our withdrawal from fund balance. Currently, our fund balance is at about $15 million. We don't think this is a one-year problem, so we are trying to be very prudent in the approach that we take to the use of fund balance, but we think you save it for a rainy day, and I think by all estimations, it's pouring out there. So it seems an appropriate time. Our challenge will be to use as little as possible, but in the budget proposal, we've included the expenditure of about $4.4 million. Tuition and fees, we think will come in at about 29.3, about 44% of the budget. County chargebacks from other counties at about $2.5 million, just under $2.5 million. And then you notice our other sources increased, and that reflects the use of the federal stimulus money. That was the second part of the initial CARES Act. You might recall that colleges received a split allocation from the first CARES Act, half of which was to go to students based on a financial aid formula. The other half was to be used for colleges to cover COVID-related expenses and challenges. So we've included that funding in our other sources projected for next year. Questions on that? Okay, next slide. When we look at the allocation for the proposed budget, wouldn't surprise anybody that 83% of the expenditures are in the salaries and benefits category. Much like the county, we have launched at our board meeting yesterday a voluntary separation program. Part of the challenge of solving next year's budget problem is figuring out exactly what the problem is. And part of figuring out exactly what the problem is getting a realistic picture of the salary and benefits. So we have launched that. Our notification date on that program is May 31st. The departure date for folks who take advantage is August 31st, which is the end of our current fiscal year. We will use the time between May and August to determine what salary savings can be gained as a result of the separation incentives. That will help us to trim. We hope that will help us to trim as we look forward. Any questions on the expense breakdown? You have the budget book provided. I'd be happy to talk about how you kind of see the big picture, what your thinking is, what questions you might have.
So Chairman, this is Case Jordan. I have questions, but I think I'd like to ask all my questions at the end of the presentation, but I just want to let you know that, because I don't really know exactly where my questions fit into this presentation right now, so I'll just ask at the end if that's okay.
Very good. Yep. We'll come back to you.
I am pretty much at the end because we weren't sure. We know that we were able to send out the budget books ahead of time, too much for screens. But I did have one additional slide because I know many of you might be worried because we have a long-standing time-honored tradition. So I've provided in my last screen an IOU for you for some delicious baked goods that when we are able to be together, our students will prepare. You know, one of the things we've said to students is you can't let go of tradition just because the world's a little upside down. So there's banana bread or something in your future. And I did want to share that with you today. So I'm open to questions, whether it's on the budget book or on anything I've said today. I have, as I said, Mark Manning, our CFO, as well as Sarah Gaffney and Carol Obernesser on the line who can help as well.
Very good. Well, thank you, Dr. Crable. And yes, we all will be excited, I know, about the treats to come. And so thanks for that. So I have questions, but yes, Legislator Jordan, I'll let you first. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. I do have a number of questions here based on your budget. You're showing about a 13% decrease in the chargebacks that the college receives, but about a 24% increase in chargebacks are going to have to be paid by the county to other counties. How did you arrive at those projections?
So our chargeback rate is determined by formula, and then we apply that formula to the expectation of the number of out-of-county we are likely to have based on general enrollment assumptions.
And then Casey, in regards to your second question, that information has come from the county budget office. So we don't put together that information. We obtain that information from the county as to what they have put in their budget for what they anticipate paying other counties for students that live in Onondaga County and go outside of Onondaga County. And some of those rates are pretty high. Like the Fashion Institute of Technology is about $15,000. So every county has a set, basically, as Casey said, it's a formula that arrives at that. So I'm not sure what was entailed in that side of the equation, but on the college's side, to Dr. Crable's point, that was based off of our formula. Basically, our chargeback rate is remaining the same as last year, and we're expecting a small decline in enrollment. So that is how we got our chargeback revenue.
Well, and from what I can see from your budget book, it looks like you're projecting that the number of students here that attend college here is to be going down, and looks like the number of local students going to other colleges is going to be going up. And I'm not sure again where that projection comes from.
Again, that projection came from the county, not from us. I asked Tara Vendetti what they have in the budget for what the county anticipates paying out. So you would need to check with the county on how they come up with that. We just put it in. We put it in the budget book. We don't have any conversation as to what the county is budgeting, but based on what we are seeing, we're anticipating a decline in non-resident students. So I cannot answer.
From an enrollment standpoint, we track the percentage of high school students in the local high schools that graduate and come to OCC, and that percentage has stayed consistent in the 7 years that I've been here. It's about 18% overall, but the numbers in those classes has gone down. So we've drawn the same percentage, but the overall numbers have declined locally.
Chairman, if I could hop in for a second on that.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, Casey, I've always, Casey Jordan, the chargebacks have always been an area of interest of mine as well. So I've done a little research on it. And the way the process works is when one of our students is going to go to a community college, just to pick one, they have to apply, so to speak, through our county finance office and get a sign that they are a resident of our county, and where they're going. So that way the finance folks can calculate, number one, that we've got a student going to another county, and two, what the rate is for that county. So as they were saying, if it's the FIT down in New York State, incredibly expensive. If it's Hudson Valley out, whatever their rate is. So that's why that number is calculated at county finance and then sent over to OCC, because they're the ones actually processing the applications for those. So they know, who's going where. They've got a good feeling for it, at least.
Well, I mean, again, I understand how the process works in terms of the chargeback system, but again, I'm not really sure where they're coming up with figuring out how many students are going to be attending, that the number of students attending OCC is going down, whereas the number of local students going to other counties is going up. Although I understand that, I guess if tuition is increasing faster than ours, that would reflect or be explanation for those numbers. But I mean, we're looking at almost a 20% decrease in our enrollment, since 2018, but an increase in chargebacks for our students going to other community colleges. But I guess that kind of leads me to the next question: is what happens? So we're projecting a certain amount for chargeback revenues, but if revenues end up being more projecting, where do those excess revenues go?
So again, this is a budget, so we're guessing on what we think we're going to get for full-time enrollment. It's not just chargeback revenue. I mean, that really is, there's several pieces of the pie where we're trying to do our best estimations from the data we have. And again, with where we are with the COVID-19, it's even more challenging. But, so we could, to your point, we could find that we had more non-resident students come in and our chargeback revenue next year ends up being higher, or alternatively, fewer and lower. So
Sure.
Again, it all becomes part of the overall budgeting of, we may have favorable budget variances on that side, but then maybe not hit our enrollment target. So it's a continual, basically monitoring of where we're going to be overall for overall revenue and expense. So, if we find that our enrollment is continuing to go down, we may need to look at other expense areas to cut during the year, et cetera. So again, just basically a budget that's put together that we continue to monitor. And, I don't think we've ever been right on mark. Some years we may have more and some years we may have less. But again, we look at it as overall revenue and then managing it to the expenses.
Kind of a moving target. My question is so if the charge revenues that receive exceed what your budget is projecting, does that extra money go into your fund balance, or does that go towards using? I guess I'm not really sure where that additional revenue would go. I'm assuming if it's revenue that it would have to come out.
Exactly. So to your point, we record all of our revenue for the year and all of the expenses for the year, and wherever we end up, if we end up with net savings, then there would be an increase in the fund balance. If we ended up spending more than we received, then we would have a use of fund balance. Now, knock on wood, we have not been in that situation, but to Dr. Crable's point, this year we are. In light of all the uncertainties and the state cuts, we are budgeting that use of fund balance.
Just on Casey, real quick. On that, isn't it in the past where the money coming in for the fund back for chargebacks goes to capital?
Go ahead, Mark.
So yeah, there are two components of the chargeback. There's the chargeback revenue that the college receives, and that's what we have put in our revenue budget. And then every community college is allowed to charge $300 to the other counties per FTE. So again, that could be multiple students. You're looking at 30 credit hours is one FTE. So that money is collected and held on the college's behalf in trust for the county. And then twice a year, I turn those dollars over to the county. It's about $400,000. It used to be about $400,000. For 2019, it was about $363,000 that we turned over to the county, and that money is helping the county to pay some of the debt service associated with the bonds for the capital projects. And that $300 is a statute amount. We cannot charge more or less for the other counties for the capital. Again, that's not part of our
Mary,
budget.
I have a quick.
Chairman Burt, oh,
Mary,
sorry,
you-
Mary.
Hang on just a minute.
Uh,
So just just a quick question back to Dr. Crable. So how many hours does it take in order to be considered a full-time student? I'm sorry, I forgot.
So the way we measure that is every 30 credits hours is 1 FTE. And that comes from the idea that a traditional full-time student would take 15 credits a semester.
And in terms of the billing, what SUNY says is if a student registers for 12 or more credits, we charge them the fixed full-time rate. So, so you could have one student taking 12 credits and one student taking 18 credits. They are charged that same full-time rate. And then the part-time credit hours are for anyone that takes fewer than 12 credits in a semester. And the part-time rate is charged.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Burtis, it's Legislator Ryan. Okay.
Yes,
Wait,
let's-
I still have some more questions.
hang on, let's let Jordan finish up.
Thank you. So your budget projects increases in your overtime, your travel and training. Could you maybe just elaborate on why those?
So the travel and training, right now that is scheduled to increase, but that would be one of the first areas we cut. The increases that are in for next year's budgets, we have a couple of programs. Every program has a reaccreditation cycle. So included in that, we have to pay when those accreditors come onto campus. So we have that included in the budget, as well as some additional travel for our colleague, our student information system. There's a national conference that goes on. But again, that's one area we would cut. And in addition to that, our most recent faculty contract that was approved, we have a new 5-year contract. We're in the first year right now. We do have a travel requirement to reimburse those faculty members that travel to our high schools. We have a very robust college credit now. With about 19,000 credit hours are generated by students in the Onondaga high schools that are taking the OCC classes in the high school, and they're getting that college credit.
And what's the projected overtime increase?
Projected overtime increase, and again, that is something that would be cut first if necessary. But again, we do have contractual with our CSEA, and most of that overtime is on the facility side and campus safety with events and other things. So once they exceed that 35-hour work week, they are required under the contract to pay overtime. And we have just a fixed amount of full time. So the trade-off is that sometimes rather than have another full-time individual or several full-time individuals and the associated salary and benefits, it's better to have a little bit overtime associated.
Right. You're showing an increase in, I guess, your summertime student tuition revenue, whereas a decrease in the spring tuition. Can you maybe explain that projection?
Yeah, so that basically what we projected for summer was a flat enrollment. And again, we hope that's an area that we can capitalize on, especially with the Excelsior program. So with the Excelsior program, again, if a student is getting their 30 credit hours over a 12-month period, they are eligible for basically full tuition from New York State. So summer can be a safety net for some of those students. They may have started off all 15 credits and then dropped a class, so they're down to 12. So in order for them to remain eligible, winter session and summer sessions are safety nets. So for next year's budget, we did assume basically an enrollment flat for summer, about 11,000 credit hours, but with the associated tuition increase, that's what's making that incremental increase.
You're showing like a 92% decrease in your interest in earnings on investments. Can you maybe elaborate on?
Yeah, unfortunately, we started. Yeah, we
Well, are you sure right now I am, but
if you look historically, the college used to only generate like $8,000 to $12,000 of interest income, and a couple of years ago we joined up with an outside kind of a cash management group called 3+1 Advisors. In fact, Steve Morgan might use them a bit with the county, and they helped us to basically put our money into what was the highest yielding areas, and that was U.S. Treasuries. And actually, we started the year, we were getting over 2%. In fact, I just had a maturity, a tranche expire yesterday, and I was getting 1.5%. I'm getting 0.08% on that renewal. So I had actually had a higher interest income in my first iteration, and then based on the interest environment, I've taken a much more conservative approach for next year. So again, we always had a very modest interest income. We were fortunate to ride the wave the last couple of years, and now in light of the crisis, and we're now looking at potentially putting some of the money into a local bank because we might get 50 or 60 basis points on those earnings, whereas the treasuries are not paying that.
So are those investments basically like CDs or savings accounts or treasury bonds?
Yeah, right now they're solely treasury bonds in various tranches. It could be 30, 60, 90. I think 90 days is the longest, so it's kind of a rolling.
All right. And lastly, on your funded positions, you have a number of positions related really to your on-campus housing, including an additional position for a residence hall director. And it would seem to me that because of the way the OCC is set up, the housing side of things is really a separate, not-for-profit corporation. It would seem to me that these positions should really be funded out of the housing corporation and not out of your operating budget.
That is a great point. Do you want to take it?
They are. We made the decision a couple of years ago for liability and oversight that those should be employees of the college, but we bill the housing authority to support those positions. So they show on our funded positions, but they're paid for through a billing arrangement with the housing corporation.
Correct. There's a charge back.
And benefits and the whole.
Yes, yeah, benefits, and that's included in the revenue offset to expense. So we do not subsidize the housing at all. In fact, we probably make money because we may not hire this res hall director, and but we lock in a fixed dollar amount that assumes all of the funding, all of the salary benefits, et cetera, in that chargeback revenue. So yes, we do not fund the housing at all in any way.
All right. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
One more thing before I swing it to Mr. Legislator Ryan. I've got a couple callers here, caller 3, caller 4. You could mute your phones, please. We've got some feedback coming through. It's not Nick, it's not Vernon. Not sure who it is, but we've got some stuff coming through. So if you could mute that for us, that'd be appreciated. Legislator Ryan, did you still have a question, sir?
I do. Just yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I do have just a quick question on a question on the expense side. So it looked like the expense for salaries and benefits we're going up. I think I saw that, but we also are anticipating maybe some leaving on an incentive or voluntary leave or retiring, right? Is that would that be going down or is it not?
So what we have in our current budget for 1920 is salaries of $30.7 million. Next year, that's going down about $500,000 to $30.2 million. And the benefits are going down from $18.2 million to $16.9 million. other wages 9.1 to 8.1. So again, some savings on our adjunct side. So we are showing a reduction in next year's budget on the salary and benefits over this year.
And that's a reduction that is known now. The incentives that you mentioned were made available as of yesterday with a notification date of the end of May. So that would add to it.
And hopefully any additional savings through voluntary retirement or separation could offset the expense side, which would hopefully decrease the amount of fund balance used to offset the budget gap.
Yeah. So
Correct.
that's one of the places we would look to for savings to decrease the amount that we have to withdraw from the fund balance. That's right.
And Chris, I think when you look at the pie chart that Casey, Dr. Crable presented, it does show that 58% of our budget is salary and wages versus last year 57.6. So as a percentage, it looks like it's going up, but our our denominator is down. So last year we had a $69.5 million budget. So you're taking your wages as the numerator and the denominator is 69.5 million. This year, or for next year's budget, that denominator is going down to 66.6.
Right,
So
that's what I was looking at, and that was kind of confusing.
Yeah. So on a percentage basis, yeah, it's pretty flat, but on a dollar basis, we've got savings, and that's on page 3.3-3 of the budget book, and it has some of the detail on the salary.
Right. And the second question, we're good. We talk a lot about fund balance, and we've been talking about it through the counties, but I mean, we don't really have a choice. To Dr. Crable's point, it's a rainy day fund, but it's pouring out. But the usage of 4.3 coming out of fund balance still keeps us in a good spot relative to the overall budget and the amount of fund balance we have.
So it would keep us at about 15% of budget left in the fund balance. In our history, if you will, a prudent fund balance is considered between 10 and 20%. So we'd be right in the middle. We'd be comfortable. The question that we're wrestling with a little bit, Chris, is how many years long is this problem, right? So while we're comfortable with this as a strategy right now, whether I'd be comfortable with it for a second year will depend upon our skill in minimizing how much we end up having to use of that 4.4.
Another quick question. I'll ask you a question, Dr. Crable, that you can answer, but I know that there's the kind of the mindset, and maybe it's just people thinking about it or talking about it. If potentially people are distance learning and going away, would that be better just to do your classes and go to OCC? Have you heard that in the community? Do you anticipate anything? I know you can't anticipate it, but I'm hearing it, and it's a very real possibility, which would be a good benefit for us because we get more students. But what do you think about that?
So a couple things. We are hearing from guidance counselors that students who had plans originally are rethinking those plans for a couple of reasons. One is parents are worried about kids going too far away from home with the uncertainty of the health condition. And two, with the uncertainty of the market, people are concerned about paying the price perhaps of their original school they selected. So we do think we're going to see some students who make the decision to maybe spend a year with OCC to let things settle down. In fact, yesterday we enrolled 2 students whose original plans were to go to Cornell. If Cornell is going to be online and OCC is going to be online, people are looking at the value proposition and thinking I should take it at OCC.
Great. Last final question. In the beginning of the presentation, you referenced a partnership through Solvay. I think you also referenced ESM with students going. Can you just really and I don't want to take up any more time, explain that about just a couple
Sure.
digest version? Also, what can we do? Second follow-up to that is what can we do to possibly get other districts participating in that?
So I can give you my elevator speech on that, and it's a thumbnail. So we noticed that a lot of students were coming to college and they weren't quite ready for college, whether it was their mental framework around how to study or how to be a little more independent, or whether it was skills in terms of English, math, or whether it was hadn't done much career thinking. So we approached the high schools. We started with ESM and Solvay, and we were looking at it as a college readiness 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade program. We provide workshops every year. Students commit to the program and they have to hit 3 benchmarks. They have to hit a benchmark in terms of unexcused absences. They have to hit a benchmark in terms of grades and a benchmark in terms of engagement outside themselves, whether it's a club or sports or band or community service. The notion that college success really depends on showing up, doing your best, and getting involved. For students who hit those benchmarks for 4 years, we raise the money for their tuition through our foundation. So we started with ESM and Solvay. We now have Onondaga Central, Jordan Elbridge, and Lafayette involved. And it takes really the commitment of the school administration and our fundraising ability, right, to support students that come through that pipeline.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Burtis, Deb Cody, I have a question.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Crable. As always, just a great presentation and considering so many unknowns, putting this together as best you can. I just want to follow up on Legislator Ryan's question about students potentially coming to high school that wouldn't have otherwise under different circumstances. But what about some of the adults? Like, do you anticipate or are you seeing any more adult interest in, folks who are home, they've been unemployed, they've been not sure, uncertain about their future and going back to their job, or just having more time to be thinking about, do I really want to go back to that job? Is there something else I'd like to do? And, considering maybe, community college as a way to further their training in a different field.
So thank you. Yes. I want to say we've got 2 tracks of thought about that. Number one is that's why we've started with the addition of new programs. We've built about 14 new workforce-related degree programs for people who are adults who are looking to either train for the first time or retrain for some kind of professional or paraprofessional role. Some of those we rolled out in our weekend program, and to our weekend program, we're now adding human services. We know that a lot of our agencies, whether they serve folks who have addictions or people with disabilities, that they can't find people with basic level skills. So we've rolled that into our weekend program, and we think that's a great on-ramp for adults. We've also built a connection to Keuka College, which will take those students into a bachelor's program. So really almost an upward mobility trend for those students, as well as for people working in our human services field. The other side of the equation is sort of less than a degree, but more intense worker training in concert with companies. We've been very lucky in the manufacturing sector to do that with a number of companies, including Stickley, Feldmeyer, Bristol-Myers Squibb, where they have a particular need. We've been both their recruiting arm, as they say it's hard to find interested people. We've also been their training arm, and we're able to do that in however length the company needs. So it's gone everywhere from about 8 weeks to about 12 weeks so far. And that gives us more flexibility, and you don't have to say to somebody, quit your job and stay home for 2 years to get this degree. So we are looking at both. And the goal that we've set is that all of those worker training, company-related pieces should link to a degree so that that person can continue their education and move up.
Yeah, that's great. You know, obviously it presents opportunities for people while they're thinking. They have more time to think right now, but what they want to do. And I think isn't traditionally like in a recession, the adult students in community college enrollment, is there an uptick there?
There's usually an uptick, and depending on the length of the economic downturn, you might see a graduation uptick as well. And it's hard to know at this point yet. Are we in a deep trough or are we in a long trough, right? So it's hard to know whether your adult students will come for a semester and want something really intense so they can parlay that right away into a job, or whether there's a longer period of time and they can finish a degree.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions at this point? Well, I have one if we're still together. So on your enrollment assumptions, you had for part-time, you had an increase of 104, and then on full-time, you had a decrease of 489, which I understand is a conservative, I would think, conservative or realistic look at a downturn. I guess it's not a question, it's just a statement. I hope that I hope that we don't lose as many full-time, and I challenge that. Things could change, as we've been talking about, right? Folks could stay home. I've got a high school senior here, and he is all enrolled and all set to go someplace else. But honestly, as a dad, I'm wondering what's going to happen there. And, wouldn't it make sense to keep him home? If he's going to have online classes at where he goes, wouldn't it make more sense, financial sense, to hold him here and to get some of that done here? So I know I said something about that the other day too, but I just wanted to put out those numbers of what your assumptions are, and I don't know if you wanted to say something quick.
So yeah, real quick, two things about that. On the assumption side, when you see an increase in part-time and a decrease in full-time, that's also related to our expectation that people are going to want to grab a job the minute they can. And so they might keep their education going, but might drop into a part-time status, covering the bases that way. The other thing is I learned Tuesday afternoon that SUNY is going to make some marketing available to get the message out across New York that if you're worried about the fall, a great way to deal with that worry is to keep your kid home and send them to your community college. So we're going to get some help from the state in pushing that message out. So that gives me a little hope.
Great. Yeah, me too. That's great. Thank you. Questions from others?
Just a couple of follow-up questions. So the revenue from the housing corporation, where does that show up in your revenue side of your budget detail?
Mark?
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. That's on page 3-3 on the revenue offset to expense, included in the $6,495,000. So in that $6,495,000, as Dr. Crable mentioned, we've got $2.6 million coming in from the stimulus funding, and then we've got event revenue that falls under that bucket. We have, I think it's about $1.5 million that comes in from the housing. We also have some of our other affiliates. Our auxiliary gives us a chargeback revenue, and our foundation gives us a chargeback revenue. So that is included in that line.
Okay. And lastly, the for services, not employees, so it showed about a $300,000 increase. Can you maybe just elaborate?
Yeah, so the fees for services, that increase is associated with, we've got a new start. It's called our Starfish Hobson. It's a retention alert system that we have coming in for next year. Off the top of my head, I don't have the, I can follow up and shoot an email on the rest, but they were contractual increases.
We did secure federal funds against that through a Title III grant fund.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Questions from legislators? Mr. Bush, you're muted.
I'll just throw in a little bit.
Hang on there, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, Mr. Bush was started. I'll get back to you.
Didn't hear him, sorry.
I just want to give a quick shout out to President Crable and her staff. The collaboration and outreach to the high schools has just been fantastic, and that relationship continues to grow. And it's a wonderful program they have in place, and encouraging kids to increase their academic skills, but also get college credit that they can use when they go off to whatever college they wish. And I just wanted to tell you thank you for doing that. And the positive impact on the families and the kids is just enormous. And so that's my take on that. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I was just going to share actually Ken's point a little bit. I know when in Lafayette, specifically my neck of the woods, that program has been very, very successful, number one. Number two, thanks to Casey and the whole crew for putting together, a budget that's, I think very responsible and very forward-looking in a time that it's incredibly difficult to be forward-looking. So I want to appreciate that. And then my last thing, maybe a suggestion for future meetings. I think we should ban the use of the words numerator and denominator. It really brings up back some unpleasant memories. So, maybe suggest that just for future reference.
So noted.
I'm a West Point grad. Wow. Other questions? Anything at all? Are we still here? The screen's going funny. Well, I appreciate everybody being good. Looks like everybody was muted. I think we're still together. Is there anything else before we dismiss? Dr. Crable, I can see you. Good. Coming back. Anything else at all?
Just like to thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts and our challenges. And, we tell my colleagues across the state when they talk about their counties, we tell them that we feel sorry for them because our county has been incredibly supportive, both from an operating and a capital standpoint, and we are extremely grateful for that continued support. So thanks to all of you.
Well, thank you. And as an OCC grad a long time ago, I have fond memories, and I think it's a great community college here, and I'm so glad to be able to support you now. And and we wish you well as we go into these uncharted waters and hope that we have better outcomes than we've planned. But I agree, it's very responsible, and I appreciate that conservative budget, and we'll hopefully be able to hold on more of that fund balance for you. So anything else?
Before we sign off, I did, to Casey's question on the fees for services, I did recall that part of that increase, Casey, too, is, as Dr. Crable mentioned, we have that partnership now on the paramedic program that we hope to get approval for the fall with the Department of Ed. And basically how that's going to work is we will be registering and collecting the revenue for both SUNY Upstate Medical and in the college. And then we have a revenue share agreement. So we will then pass that expense over to them, and that's in the fees for services. So So I have it factored in on the revenue side, and then the portion that we will be giving to Upstate for the use of their faculty and staff for teaching those programs is in the fees for services. Yep.
Great, thank you. If there's nothing else, I believe I need a motion. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Linda.
That's a first by legislator Jordan.
Second by Linda Irvin.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
We are adjourned. Thank you so much for
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
great meeting. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.